millennials are synonymous to political activism. Like, that's a big part of what we want. Positive impact on society. And millennials have driven a lot of movements like Black Lives Matter. Do you feel like them focusing more on issues and less on
partisan stuff?
Exactly. How do you feel the landscape will change? And do you feel like partisanship masks the importance of the issues that underlie?
I don't think the issue isn't necessarily because they have to pick between causes or partisan issues, because it's happened before. When the women's rights back in the 20th century, it wasn't a partisan thing. When you had the kind of rights, but for example, Martin Luther King, like his movement wasn't actually part of any party necessarily. So that hasn't changed. But I think the problem is the causes. Yes, the thing with millennials is that they're very idealistic, and they also want to have a positive impact. So they think we just have to kind of create new movements, create new causes. Some of the causes are good, absolutely, but then like they start random campaigns to, like, I don't know, ban candles or just for the sake of it. And so it's not necessarily the difference between being active in a party or just do causes. Always do both, and actually that's a good thing that there are all these campaigns. It's actually better. That's the reason I'm not going to be an elected politician. I don't want to be in a party, is because I think I could have a bigger impact from the outside with ideas. And so, but people are different. Some people are built for that.
Advisor. And I want to talk about this and what is it that makes a good politician. And different people think different things. And I think for a long time we're all more understanding of the Kennedy paradigm, where you're a career politician, so you start from early. But now there's, I think, increasingly a rise worldwide of the businessman model, the Donald Trump model of the fact that you have a track record, you've run a business, and in that same way you're able to run a country. Do you think good businessmen make good political leaders?
Of course, but it's not necessarily just because they're in business. I do believe politicians, because the world has changed, the policies they make have changed. In the past, a lot of the politicians that, for example, the left actually liked because of their policies, and they came up with all these ideas that kind of people on the left like. All these politicians were elitist, academic, didn't have a job in their life, career politicians. They were born into it, powerful, but they still did it anyway. They did good things. So anyone could technically, as long as you have good ideas, it's fine. But these days, because the world has changed and the policies that politicians create are different, and they're more involved in our everyday life, I believe politicians that have had experience in real life, could be business, could be anything, they're more effective. And if I had a choice, it shouldn't be black and white. But if I had a choice between a good business model politician than a career politician, I would pick the business one.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. What about the rise of nationalism worldwide? And I think we see that here in Britain with, obviously, Brexit, and we see that in the States with, obviously, America First being the big slogan of Trump's party. So I'm interested to understand why, because I've been thinking about this, and it seems like as a nation for the past 50 or so years, we've been taking regular steps in favor of globalization, in favor of working together and being collaborative. Yet, when you do look at the major political economies worldwide, you see a bit of an inward look. It's almost like politicians are reminding us of true identity and what is more characteristic of identity than our very nation. How do you understand the rise of nationalism around the world? So
this is coming from a libertarian, so I'm a complete internationalist, and ideally I don't want to have any borders or flags, but I like realists, so this is the world we live in, so you have to have your country first. But if you say America first or Britain first, doesn't necessarily mean isolation. I think this nationalism thing, or national identity or patriotism has always been there, so it's not a new thing, it's just being magnified or being taken advantage of, because of it's a overreaction to the other side, the more globalist mentality. And this is why there's a difference between globalism and internationalism, and there's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. So I'm not a globalist, I'm an internationalist, because the true definition of globalist is to basically, ideally, we want tomorrow, like a Star Trek world, where president of Earth. And that doesn't. It's a good idea, but it's not going to work yet. So, whereas internationalism is cooperation. I think nationalism has always been there, and and there are different types. There's a difference between the Brexit type and the Trump types and the like Polish side, because even, for example, a lot of Brexiteers, they don't necessarily say, obviously we don't want to be in the EU because we want to be alone. They still say we want to trade with the world. Whereas, for example, in Poland or like Hungary, they say, yeah, just shut down the whole country. So
yeah, it's very interesting what you say about being a globalist or an internationalist, because I think a lot of people, I think myself included, probably, I thought I was a globalist, but maybe
it sounds nicer, that's why.
It does.
Yeah, I think there's definitely misunderstanding on that.
Back to what you said about the Star Trek world, because I find that quite interesting, connecting that to what you said earlier about scrutiny being on voters now. So I feel like one of the main important things for a democracy to work is for the voters to be informed. And that tends to be very difficult to do when you have such a huge number of people that you're trying to inform, and there's so much information out there, and the truth and what isn't the truth can get mixed up. So how do we change that? How do we make people more informed? How do we make people know that this is what you need to do if you want to be an advised voter?
We don't, and we shouldn't.
No,
because it's a very new thing now. Again, it's driven by millennials, but not just millennials. It's a new thing with the. We don't like the results of certain elections. We're like, well, people are uninformed or people are stupid. It's always been like this. People are always misinformed, and the best way you do it is, well, America initially, the whole system was established by this, where a decentralized system where ideally I will advocate for a completely decentralized system, whereas, for example, the problem we have, whether it's like referendums or national elections, is that if someone in London votes for something, it might be good for London, but it's not good for Scotland. That's the problem. So the best way to do it is decentralize it, so people in Scotland just vote for Scottish stuff, people in Manchester, that affects their neighbourhood. So in a very localized level, like with the states, like the federalization of the kind of Washington DC and everyone. And it's changing it. It's going back to power towards DC. That's the main thing. And this way, people in Scotland won't complain about London voters. So and the best way to tackle misinformed people or problem in democracy, you could either abolish it, have dictatorship, or have a more less centralized system where politicians have less power, so that they make fewer policies that affects our lives. We should be responsible for our own lives. Governments have no responsibility towards it in society. People have responsibility. Again, that's the American system, or was up to a point.
You think it's changed?
Yeah, unfortunately. America's becoming more Europeanized, and that's a problem.
Can you explain this?
I think it's because of the culture. Obviously, the majority of America was from Europe anyway, like the Irish and the Italians. But there were different types of people initially moving there. The first generation were the aspiring middle classes from Europe. They were kind of upper working class. They just wanted a better life, and they wanted to be free and be greedy, build things for themselves. And especially now with the internet, and just before that, the closer the world got, the more exposed America became to Europe. I'm not advocating America to be isolated, just be American, but then you've had different types of Europeans, for example, going from Britain, from Germany, from France and Italy, and that's why America, policy-wise, it's all becoming, even in America, we want more handouts, we want more help, we want more intervention from government. This is a very European thing. In America, when it was free, when it was just do your own life, yes, there's a safety net. If you are in need, government should help. But stop with this European thing of just help me, give me things, have a positive impact.
Bringing it back to, I guess, millennials and politics, we asked you at the beginning, why are we so disillusioned, or why do we feel disconnected? And if you look in the media, if you search millennials and politics, so many articles come up that apparently we're incoherent in our views, we don't turn up to vote enough. But you say that this isn't something that's new, it's been with every generation. So why do you think the media places such a blame on millennials at the moment for this?
It has always been the same way. It's changed a bit, it's been magnified. Again, without getting political about this, it's just the fact that there's been a lot of research, for example, a few years ago, before this rise of snowflakey millennials, before this, so up until up until 2012, 13, there was a lot of surveys that showed that millennials in general are more liberal, right-leaning. So they want more freedom. They want to decide for themselves. They don't believe in obviously nationalism or big government. So essentially they're more capitalist and more free market.
Yeah.
So if you ask them questions without saying parties, they will pick more right-leaning policies. But then somehow, because of the way things gone with social media, misinformation, with national media, now they're being being categorized into a box of, you're all snowflake, you're basically left wing, for example.
Yeah.
And obviously not all of them are, and even those that think they are shouldn't be, but also vice versa. Some think they should be right wing or left wing. So it's a bit of a mess in terms of the media and social media.
And I think there's a lot of judgment when it comes to picking a political party. For example, in America, there's quite a lot of stigma when you're, say, a Republican, but were you to offer, as you said, certain capitalist-based theories about personal profit, personal ownership for profit, which is the whole concept of capitalism, to someone without the Republican. Without the Republican label to it, they would in fact agree with that. So I think oftentimes the labels are more dangerous than the policies themselves, and because millennials feel a little scared of being judged, of picking one side over the other, they will not even give the policies a chance.
Yeah.
Do you agree with this?
Yes, but at the same time, the reason younger generation in general, not just millennials, every generation when they're younger, they overreact and kind of to go differently to their parents is because as humans we do that. So a lot of times, what about our parents have the mentality we go the other way around,
Rebels.
and it keeps going down, but step by step. So this is why the millennials, the last generation, Generation X, slightly different. So we're just doing things differently, and it's an overreaction because they keep pressuring their kids. You should think like this. You should think that way. And but it goes round. So now, a lot of millennials are, again, like in America, the stigma about whatever side, or you should be part of a tribe. They're very tribal. Ironically, for the whole point of millennials is supposed to be very individualistic. Like we're free people, free-minded, but they're very tribal. Are you one of us or not? But because of that, they're actually then, just like what their parents did to them, or to all the younger generation, they're also now alienating the same generation. So there's a lot of silent Republicans, silent Brexiteers, silent Conservatives, silent whatever.
I agree with that.
They're not loud. So
I mean, we went to the London School of Economics, which is, and political science, and it's a very political university.
Very biased.
I felt when I was there that unless you really had the statistics to back up any view, sometimes I wouldn't want to say anything because there would be so many people that would be straight at you. Which is good. I mean, there were so many discussions there, and many politicians come from our university, but it is kind of scary sometimes to say what you want to say.
Actually, you made a really good point. I think regardless of sides, and to answer your question earlier in terms of how do we fix democracy and information, it's just, especially our generation, just be more open-minded. Don't get your news from one side or the other side, and that's what we do all the time. Like if you're right wing, you just watch Fox News. If you're left wing, you just read the Guardian. And the best way to get information is read both sides, and then do your own personal research afterwards, and then form your own opinion.
I would like to hear your view on something. So talking about LSE, we were doing quite a lot of political debates, and I was chairing the policy committee, and we were getting warnings about prior to certain debates we would have to label them as we would have to send out trigger warnings or things like this. And you talked about sensitivity and you talked about being open, and I just want to hear your view on the idea of a safe space and the universe being a safe space, and sending out trigger warnings when we're about to debate a specifically sensitive political issue, something we did all the time at LSE. What do you think about this?
So that's why the whole kind of phrase the snowflakes came from. So there's it's just word you can't say in front of a lot of people because they also misunderstand the meaning. They try and change the definition of saying, it's just because we're confident, we're proud of our ideas, just leave us alone. The real definition of snowflake is basically you're not open-minded and you don't want to be exposed to new ideas, so you get offended. But the other thing is, not only get offended, they get offended on behalf of others. And even if that group of people are not offended, you just offended on behalf of everyone. You can't say that because I think someone is going to be offended. This is why a lot of comedians are now banned from going to campuses. They can't have shows because they have to like sign up to this like checklist of, well, we can't make a joke about this, make a joke about that. That's the whole point of comedy.
We had invited a certain politician, who I will not name, during my time at LSE, and we approved him from the policy committee. However, outside the theater where he was going to give his lecture, there were a number of students with
Protesting.
not wanting that person on campus. What do you think about this?
Well, it happens to me all the time. So I actually have a speech at a university in West London in September.
Yeah.
And certain groups have already said they're going to come and protest. It's like I'm some sort of evil person. Not even going to say anything controversial. I don't think I say anything like bad. Again, but it goes back to the whole point that they're not open to new ideas. But again, this is the same group of people who then complain about voters not being informed and about all the kind of different information and ideas. But if you're not open yourself, what do you expect the others to like be open? So that's
Exactly.
That's a
Everyone
very
has the
good
right
point.
to speak their mind as long as they're not causing any harm to someone, and it's then up to you if you wish to follow them and believe in them or not. But I don't think you should deprive your fellow classmates or
And if you're not having your opinions challenged, how are you going to know whether you agree
or not? Exactly.
You don't understand how a lot of things we talk about are kind of trivial in terms of the issues.
That's interesting.
But there is a massive threat of to free speech, and so we've lost it here. We don't have free speech in this country legally. The only kind of good country that still have free speech is the United States of America.
First Amendment.
Because so the moment we, like Canada, we created the hate speech laws, it's now affecting everyone. And so again, don't judge policy by its intention but by its outcome. The intention was good. It's about to kind of stop kind of hate, but you can't stop speech. Like, people are going to still say things.
We'd be happy to have you back to have an episode on free speech later on.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting.
That would be great. Just want to finish off with one question.
Yeah, watch out.
Yes, I'm single.
After the show, how do we instill trust in millennials? We ran a poll and the majority of people voted, the greatest majority voted they do not trust politicians. How do politicians make millennials trust them?
So it's the job of the millennials to then get into politics, become politicians, and make people trust them. If you want politicians to be trusted, become a politician. Then make other people trust them. So,
and we're getting to the right age range now.
compared to other Western European countries, this is the best country in terms of getting involved with a party and have the opportunity. Anyone can do it. You don't need any kind of connections or anything.
Yeah.
And apart from certain parties that you have to be. I can't say it. But anyone can do it, regardless of your background, regardless of kind of money or kind of connection. And you just have to kind of believe in it. Just get involved. If you care, get involved.
That's a really nice note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We're going to leave a link to your YouTube channel in the description.
Thank you to the audience for tuning in for our third episode. Next week we will be in a new location, which will be a surprise, so tune in to see.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
It's that new age, it's that new era.